In this video, I'm going to show you how to layer up various different samples to create new samples like drum hits. And I'm going to show you a few things to look out for when you're doing this to make sure you don't cause unwanted results. And another, I'm going to explain a reason why I think this is a good practice. So sometimes you might find a sound that fits really well with your track, but you feel like it's missing the body. Like you might have a snare hit, you might be missing the body, or it might be missing the top, like the fizzle, or you just might find that you want a sound which is more interesting, or it's just got like more layers going onto it. Then this is a really good way of doing it instead of just keep scrolling through sample packs. I mean, there is a bit of scrolling to do because you have to grab a few hits that you're going to layer on top of each other. And to show you how to do this, what I've done is just took this snare sound, which is great on its own anyway, but we're just going to add a little bit more interest. If you wanted it to be a feature sound that kind of pops out of the track, then this is a really good way to go around it. And there's a few things that I want to mention as well before we start, which is when sample layering, you've got to be careful of issues like phasing, or you've got to be careful of things like if you stack up too many transients, then it's going to really push up the transient of the sound, and you're going to overload the master channel. So when I do this, what I tend to do is use fading. So maybe I'll just use the transient from one, and I'll use the body and this part of the waveform for after the first hit. And also phasing is when you've got two sounds that are very similar and the waveforms are polar opposites. So these are kind of in line with each other, but it doesn't matter too much because these are different frequencies. But if you've got two sounds that are very, very similar, if they're going like that, then you will get phasing issues. And there's a way to combat this. So you can use a different sound, or you can move the sound along using the track delays, or just grabbing the sample. Or you could go into, let me just have a quick look on here. So we've got the utility. So in utility, you have got this one. Just a quick way to do it, just go on phase invert, open that up, and it inverts the phase of one of the channels. So that basically just flips the waveform so it's in line with the other one. So I mean, that's something that gets used quite a lot in studio recording when people are recording drums and there's different mics. That's the reason for it, and that's how it came about. But it can be useful in sound design as well when using samples. So let's get started, right? So we've got this snare drum here. And what I'm going to do is layer on some extra layers and play around with them and try and get them to fit with each other. So the first thing that I want to layer on top of this is this clap. So let's have them both playing at the same time. And they sound great as they are, but what I want to do is just maybe remove this first transient here and put in a fade, and we're just going to move it around till we find a nice place to let this sample sit on top of the other one. Kind of lights it there, that was nice, like a nice little slapback effect with the clap and the snare. And what we're going to do now is, because you've layered them up, you have an opportunity really to kind of widen one of the sounds. So the clap, we're going to use Ozone's Imager to widen it. So if I click this on, this is when I got this, it was a free plugin in an email, so just double check, you might be able to get this free. They sent out in a newsletter, which is quite cool. So you got this stereoize button here, and once you've got that clicked on, you can start to dial in the width. So if you look on this vector scope, you'll see that it's mono mainly, and then as I start to dial this in, it'll widen it. Yes, that's good for me. And then what I'll sometimes do as well is go in and check the EQ. So maybe we'll remove this mud here. Obviously, the snare sits around this area, the main kind of fundamental body hit of the snare. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of carve this out so it's not interfering too much. Yeah, that'll do for that. So that works nicely. And what we're going to do next is we're going to add in some kind of interesting grit. So I've got this effects hit here. I'm just going to experiment a little bit here and just kind of move it around and try and get it to sit somewhere nicely. So I don't want it to be obviously like a long hit. I want it to sound more like a percussive part of the hit. So let's just do this. Just drag that in. That sits quite nicely. Probably maybe a bit of a short decay. And what you can do actually is you can go in and have more control of all of the decays, so they all end at the same time. Obviously, you can tune that to like the rhythm of the groove, like the groove in your track or the rhythm, to make sure it's not too long or too short. So yeah, I kind of like that. Let's go in and have a look at what the EQ is doing, and probably play around with this a little bit, and maybe just use a certain part of the frequency. Maybe just take that top part there. Yeah, it's much cleaner. See, I like that. That's pretty good. And then obviously, like, go in and move around the volumes as well. Make sure you get a good balance between each of the sounds. Next, so the sound is quite nice. It's quite mid-sounding. I want to add a bit more like fizz to it. So we're going to add in this hat here. Let's have a quick listen to this. So it's just a really fizzy hat. Let's go into the EQ. I might just take off the bottom so we're just getting the fizz. Just want that part, and we'll try to work out where we're going to make this sit. So if I just bring this in, what do we want? I say like that part, and I want it to come in just after the transient on the snare. Actually, it works quite well when it hits with the transient, actually. Again, we'll just dial this back and make sure. I mean, it's not too, there's not a long decay on this anyway, but we're just going to bring it down. Switch his on. Yeah, I kind of like that, it works. So this is the snare sound before. And that's after. There's a lot more going on there. And this is great, but I want to kind of like gel it a little bit better. So as you can see, we've got this in a group, and I'm just going to apply a couple of different fins to gel the sound a bit more. So first I've got this drum bus compressor with a bit of drive, tiny bit of crunch, and I've pushed up the transients here, and then we've got this compressor switched on too. Let's have a quick listen to that. So it just adds a bit more punch and a bit more grit, and just gels the sounds together. And again, like another cool thing that to use on like percussion and things like that when you're trying to put them in the same room is to just use like reverb. So I've got the Valhalla Vintage reverb here. We're using a short decay. I'll turn this up full wet so you can know what it's doing. So quite subtle on that. And let's just go in and do a final bit of EQing. When I was setting up this project, you can see I already dialed in a desired like EQ here. So I'll just talk you through this. So basically I've just shaved off the sub area. And then this node here, I found that there was something resonating in one of the clips. So instead of going in and finding it, I just did it on the overall bus. So let's just have a listen to what this is. This frequency that I wanted to get rid of. So what I did was just kind of swept through the frequencies like that until I found what I was looking for. And then all you do is just pull that down so you get a nice balance. So let's have a quick listen before these have been applied. Yeah, much more solid sound. And this is before, so we're gonna just quickly play the snare on its own. And this is with all the layers and the effects. So there's just like the basics of getting to grips with layering. And then we're gonna look at how you can use this technique again, but just on like percussive sounds. And the main idea of this is that you take like the transient of one hit and you marry it up with the tail or the body of another hit. So let's go ahead and look at this. So we've got this percussive sound here. It's got a nice sharp snappy transient at the beginning. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take the transient and that'll do. And then we're going to marry it up with this sound here. So let's play this and just do. I like to do it while I'm listening. I find it's easier that way to do it. Maybe I'll just move this up, just try this. Maybe want to make it a little bit shorter sounding as well. Yeah, that sounds quite good. And then if you go into the bus again, we're just going to put on the drum bus and the reverb to gel them together. So let's go ahead and do the technique again with some different sounds, just to give you an idea of what else you can do with this technique. So again, I've got 3 more samples here taken from the Carbon pack, and I'll let you have a listen to the first one. This is the second. And the third. It's quite different sounds, but we're just going to play around and see if we can create something unique from these 3 sounds. And it's really cool this to kind of like just experiment with it, just to see what kind of stuff you can create and come up with. And try putting stuff together that shouldn't go together as well. Just see what you get, you know, like a vocal with a percussion or something like that. Let's have a quick listen and we'll try and shorten this and maybe add these other ones in. Just turn the grid off and we're just going to move this up and down and see what we can get with it. So again, let's go ahead and add a drum bus compressor and the reverb again to marry the sounds together. Yeah, as you can hear there when I ear beat it, it adds so much difference when you just kind of add some kind of saturation, compression, or and the reverb, and just try and make the sounds gel more, like they're in the same space. It makes such a difference. Like, you should always kind of try and apply that after. And again, with this drum bus, you can play around with the transients here as well. So sometimes you might find when layering sounds, you're missing something, like it's not kind of snapping as much and stuff like that. Again, just the transients, just pop them in with this transient finier or a transient designer. So yeah, there's the basics really of layering percussive sounds and trying to build your own kind of sounds from existing ones from a pack, and trying to build unique drum kits using a collection of sounds. And again, I used the Carbon hits and also the Aurora hits as well, which just both of those packs just go together really well. And you can just experiment with those sounds and kind of combine them to see what cool sounds you can get from them. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and it's give you more insight on how you can get started with putting percussion sounds together and layering. It's something that used to confuse me a little bit when people first told me about it. I used to just stack stuff together, but it's all in kind of using the envelopes, and then obviously having an end point where you can combine them and use EQs to kind of notch out problem frequencies or to kind of make these sounds gel a little bit better. I like to keep it quite simple with this stuff. Like you've just seen, there's not much. You don't need like crazy tools to do this kind of work. It's mostly audio editing. But again, use the drum bus, use a compressor or a saturator. Definitely use EQ and use a reverb just to pull them all in together. And next, I'd like to know, do you use sample layering often? Is it something that you do a lot in your productions? Have you got certain techniques that I've not utilized here? I would love to know that, so please leave us a comment in the comment section below, and I really look forward to checking those out. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you next time.